What kind of woman locks the door and starts the affair herself? I know one. Her name is Diana, and she didn't wait to be chosen, she chose. She lived in a modern home nestled deep within the manicured perfection of a gated Houston community. Glass, concrete, sleek angles. The house responded to voice commands. Lights dimmed at her sigh. Music obeyed her whispers. Everything was elegant, curated, programmable, except for love. Diana was 38. She had once been the kind of woman whose face sold perfumes, whose eyes graced billboards in cities she never actually walked through. But that was years ago. Now her face was softer, her body still graceful, but her presence in the world had grown quieter. At home, she moved like a ghost in a gallery, admired but untouched. Her husband, Graham, was a man of statutes and structure, a high-profile attorney who believed in precision. Everything had its place, and that included emotion. He was rarely home before midnight. When he was, he brought with him the smell of courtrooms and cologne. He asked about her day the way people check if the security system is armed. Out of routine, not care. Even the things he loved, like the house, he controlled. Maintenance was his domain. Contractors were pre-approved, vendors vetted. Diana wasn't allowed to call anyone without his consent. For your safety, he said, but it felt like something else. Like the house was his extension, and she was a figure inside it. Then there was Ellie, 15 years old, Graham's daughter from a previous marriage. She had moved in full-time a year ago, after her mother remarried and relocated to another state. Diana tried. She really did, but Ellie had a way of making herself unreadable. She buried herself in screens, her phone, her tablet, her laptop, but she watched more than she scrolled. Diana often caught those eyes, too quiet, too sharp, tracking her across the room. Not with warmth, not even with anger, just awareness, like Ellie knew things before they happened. Like she was waiting for a secret to confirm itself. It was a Saturday morning when Diana walked into the kitchen wearing the silk slip. Pale blue, low cut, clinging. She didn't think Ellie would be up yet. But the girls sat at the island. Cereal untouched, phone in hand, one earbud in. Diana paused. Ellie didn't speak, she just looked at her. Not up and down, not surprised, just straight, like a mirror with a brain. I didn't know you were up, Diana said, reaching for the kettle. It's noon, Ellie replied without inflection. A pause. Diana smiled, a bit embarrassed, and pulled on a cardigan. She poured her tea with hands that trembled more than she liked. Later that day, Graham called. She expected him to cancel dinner. He always did, but instead, he asked, "Everything working okay in the house?" Diana hesitated. "Yes." "Why?" "Just routine. I got a notification the pressure in the kitchen line dropped slightly." She looked at the faucet. Perfectly still. "Oh, probably nothing," she replied. "Still," he said, "don't call anyone. I'll have Ramon check it Monday." "Of course," she said, but something in her voice cracked. He didn't notice, or he did, and ignored it. That night, she stood in front of the mirror for a long time. Her body was still beautiful. Not 22-year-old beautiful, but lived in, strong, soft in places that held stories. She hadn't been touched in weeks. She hadn't been kissed like she mattered in longer than that. She leaned against the bathroom counter and whispered to her reflection, "You're still here." The house was too quiet. Ellie had gone to a friend's. Graham was at a fundraiser in Austin. Diana made a bowl of pasta and ate it standing at the sink. She dropped her fork when she noticed the water pooling beneath the cabinet. It wasn't much, but enough to darken the wood, to stain the rug. She stared at it for a long moment. Then she walked to the living room, picked up her phone, and opened a browser. She didn't call Ramon. She didn't check the list of approved vendors. She typed, "Plumbing Emergency Houston Independent." She clicked the first link with no reviews, no affiliation, just a name and a number. Her heart pounded as she pressed call. The voice on the other end was deep, unsure. Yes, she said, "My kitchen pipe. It's leaking. Can you text me your address?" She did, then stood there, The phone still in her hand. Trembling. Ellie would be back tomorrow. Graham wouldn't return until Monday. The house had never felt more vulnerable. Or more hers. She walked back to the kitchen and stared at the slowly forming puddle. A part of her wanted to cry. Another part wanted to laugh. The house that was supposed to be perfect wasn't. The app didn't catch this. The camera missed it. And for once, she didn't want to fix it the right way. She wanted someone to step into her space who didn't know her name. Who didn't see her as a wife or a stepmother. Who just saw a woman standing in her kitchen, barefoot, with a broken pipe. She looked at the leak again. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Enough to open a door that had stayed locked far too long. The knock came at 3:12 p.m. sharp. Diana had been standing near the door for the last 10 minutes. Pretending not to wait, pretending the anticipation hadn't already carved its shape into her chest. She smoothed her robe, a newer one, cream-colored silk with lace trim, and adjusted the collar. Her hair was down, no makeup except for lip balm and a brush of mascara. She told herself it was casual. She told herself she didn't care. But her pulse betrayed her. When she opened the door, the first thing she noticed was the sweat at the base of his neck. The Houston heat didn't spare anyone, not even strangers. He stood tall, broad-shouldered, maybe 29, with a faded black t-shirt and jeans that had seen work. His hands were rough. His eyes, gray, surprisingly clear, took her in with polite confusion. "Mom?" he asked. "Diana," she corrected, stepping aside. "Thank you for coming." Mason gave a single nod, stepping past her into the home. His boots made soft, awkward thuds against the polished floor. He looked around, not with awe, but with caution, like someone entering a room they'd never belong in. "The kitchen's this way," she said, leading him. He knelt quickly, laying down his bag, opening it with practiced motion. "I'll take a look underneath first." "You said it's leaking from the base." "Yes, just started last night." He ducked under the sink, flashlight in hand, muttering something about pressure valves. Diana leaned against the counter, arms crossed, watching him, watching the way his back muscles shifted beneath the cotton. The way his hand steadied itself as he worked. Precise but not rigid. "I haven't seen you on the contractor list before," she said. "That's probably 'cause I'm not on it." She smiled faintly. "Even better." Mason chuckled under his breath, not quite knowing if it was a joke. 10 minutes passed, maybe more. Diana didn't look at the clock. The air had grown thicker, not from heat, but from something else. A proximity, a presence. When Mason finally scooted out from under the sink, sitting upright with a grunt, his shirt had ridden up, exposing the small of his back. Sweat glistened along his temple. He turned to speak, and heard it, the quiet, final click of a deadbolt locking. He froze. Diana hadn't moved, her phone still in hand. One tap, and the house obeyed. It wasn't loud, just a soft mechanical murmur. But it meant everything. Mason looked at the door, then at her. Did the door just? She met his gaze, calm, unflinching. "You don't need to go yet." His breath caught, ever so slightly. I was just about to check the line pressure," he said, gesturing vaguely toward the sink. "There's no rush." He stood, slower than necessary, wiping his hands on a rag from his back pocket. "You sure everything's okay?" She stepped forward, her bare feet silent on the tile. "Do I look unsure?" Mason didn't answer, because the answer didn't matter. Diana closed the gap between them, standing inches away now. The scent of her skin, jasmine, something warm, filled the air between them. She wasn't blushing, she wasn't trembling, she was choosing. When she reached out to touch the side of his face, her hand was steady. Mason's eyes searched hers, for protest, for doubt, but found only hunger. And then they kissed. It wasn't gentle, it wasn't slow, it was desperate, immediate, like a circuit connecting after years of disconnection, like a gasp after too long underwater. His tool bag tipped over. The flashlight rolled across the floor. She didn't care. He didn't notice. Hands moved over fabric, over skin, over months and years of neglect compacted into this one thunderous moment. Somewhere, The faucet continued to drip. Diana led him to the counter, then to the floor, not minding the rug beneath them. Her robe slipped off her shoulder. He hesitated once, just once, before she pulled him fully in. It wasn't about love, not yet, not even about lust, not entirely. It was about being seen, being chosen. She needed to feel like a woman, not a wife, not a figure in a smart home, just a woman with pulse and want and hands that still knew how to reach. When it was over, they lay there, breathless, the hum of the refrigerator loud in the silence. Mason sat up first. His shirt was crumpled. He looked at her, blinking. "I should probably finish the job." Diana laughed, a real laugh, rare and sudden. "Go ahead," she said. He worked while she pulled on her robe again. Loosely this time. She poured 2 glasses of water and handed him one. He drank it quickly. They didn't talk about what happened. Not directly, but when he packed up to leave. Diana tapped her phone and the lock released with a soft beep. He turned back at the door. "You can call me again. If anything else breaks." She smiled. "I will." And she meant it. Because something had broken. And something else had finally begun. Ellie wasn't sure when it started. The shift, the ripple in the air. It wasn't something she could name. Not like a sudden loud sound or a slammed door. It was subtler than that. A change in tone, a different kind of silence. The way Diana moved through the house, slower. Like she was listening for something beneath the hum of the refrigerator. Like she was waiting. Ellie noticed the mirrors first. Her stepmother had always avoided them. Or at least, moved past them without pause. But lately, Diana lingered. She'd stand in the hallway, adjusting her hair with fingers that didn't fidget. She smiled to herself once. A soft thing, but Ellie saw it. She saw everything. The humming too. Diana had started humming again. Soft little melodies. Unfamiliar, aimless tunes. Not the kind of hum that filled a quiet house. The kind that escaped someone who wasn't trying to hide happiness. That's when Ellie got suspicious. It wasn't that she cared. Or at least, she told herself she didn't. Diana was not her mother. She never tried to be. But still, Ellie had her rhythms. She liked knowing the rules of the people she lived with. And Diana had changed. One Tuesday afternoon, while Diana was upstairs running a bath, Ellie went down to the living room. She placed her phone on the stairwell railing. Camera angled low through the open space between balusters. The kitchen was visible from there, the island, part of the counter, and the edge of the sink. Nothing direct, but enough. She hit record. The phone screen went dark. She didn't watch, didn't need to, just left it running. 26 minutes later, she retrieved it and tucked it back into her pocket. That night, after dinner, while Diana folded laundry in the bedroom, Ellie sat on the edge of her bed with her earbuds in. Scrolling, she found the video, watched it in silence. It wasn't graphic, just unmistakable. A man, early 30s, work clothes, boots, emerged from beneath the sink. Diana smiled at him. They stood too close. She touched his arm. He reached up. A kiss. Quick, familiar. Ellie closed the app. She didn't cry. She didn't even feel surprised. She just felt confirmed. The next morning, she forwarded the clip. No message, no subject line, just an email. To graham.morrison@houstonlegalgroup.com. Attachment vid_20240512_1406 MP4. She didn't tell Diana, didn't slam doors, didn't hint, just watched, observed, a quiet surveillance that had become her normal. 3 days later, she overheard Graham on the phone in his office. His voice was low but clipped, sharp in the way only betrayal could make it. She did what? A pause. No, not Julian, someone else. I don't know, blue collar, contractor type. Another pause. Yes, I have the file. Ellie leaned against the hallway wall, eyes closed. So he knew, and now everything would begin to unravel. She didn't know how she felt. Not exactly. She wasn't proud, wasn't guilty. It was like flipping a switch and then standing in the dark to see what would happen next. She had wanted clarity. Now she had it. Diana didn't mention Mason again. But Ellie noticed the silence between phone buzzes. She saw the way Diana paused near the front door sometimes, listening for footsteps that never came. The affair had stopped, or paused. Ellie couldn't be sure, but the air had changed again, this time with tension, with waiting. One night, she watched Diana stand alone at the kitchen sink, staring into the drain like it held answers. The faucet was off, everything was still. Ellie turned away, and left the room without a sound. Because now, she wasn't watching for secrets. She was watching for consequences. The courtroom was colder than it should have been. Not in temperature, but in tone. The walls were white, but the silence painted them gray. Diana sat straight in her chair, legs crossed, eyes locked on the empty bench across from her. Her fingers fidgeted once, then stilled. Not because she was calm, but because she knew cameras were watching. Her attorney whispered something, but she didn't hear it. The only voice she could make out was her own, echoing in the hollow of her chest. "I just needed to feel something." The judge called the session to order. Graham entered without looking her way. He walked to his side of the courtroom, set down a stack of documents, adjusted his tie. He looked tired, not angry, not bitter, just done. When he finally looked up, their eyes met, and it was worse than rage. The prosecution opened with details, standard filings, a timeline, a brief note about irreconcilable differences. Then came the flash drive. "Your Honor, we'd like to enter a short piece of video evidence. It was recorded within the family residence. No audio manipulation, no cuts." Diana blinked. She had seen that drive before. Ellie's. The screen to her right came to life. For a moment, it was just static and a sliver of kitchen. She felt her stomach turn before anything played. Then, there it was. Mason, emerging from beneath the sink. Her hand on his shoulder. The kiss. It was only 22 seconds long. But in that time, the courtroom changed shape. There were no gasps, just a vacuum of sound. Diana didn't look away from the screen. She couldn't. She watched herself destroy the version of her she'd fought to preserve. She watched the undoing of silence. When it ended, her attorney shifted in his seat. "Objection. Overruled," the judge said flatly. Graham rose. He didn't move toward her. Just spoke. "We're not here to shame. We're here for clarity. My daughter submitted that video. She did so without prompting, without coaching, because she wanted me to know the truth." Diana finally looked at Ellie. Her daughter sat next to Graham, straight-backed, not stone-faced, but unreadable, her hands in her lap. Her eyes, not on the screen, not on Diana, fixed on the floor. The judge's voice came next. "Custody considerations must prioritize the emotional safety of the child, in light of the submitted evidence and the child's own stated preference." Diana didn't hear the rest. All she could see was Ellie's shoulder, the curve of it beneath her gray sweater. How small it looked. She wanted to speak. When the judge asked if she had a statement, she stood, slowly. Her voice didn't tremble, though her knees nearly did. "I didn't mean to fall out of love with my life." No one spoke. "I didn't mean to make our home feel like a place you needed to spy on." Still no one. "I just needed to feel something." She looked at Graham then, pleading, but not pathetic. "You were gone so often. The house ran on apps and codes and settings. Everything was efficient. But me, I stopped being a person and became a variable, a fixture." Graham didn't flinch. When he stood, his voice was colder than the marble floor. "You didn't open your heart. You just locked the door on your shame." The judge gavelled. Decision finalized. Custody to Graham. Seoul. Diana would have supervised visitation. No overnights. When it ended, people moved quickly, papers shuffled, coats grabbed, footsteps echoed. Diana stayed seated. No one told her to get up. Ellie walked past without pausing. Only when the courtroom emptied did Diana rise. She looked at the empty seat Ellie had filled, and whispered, "I saw you. You know, you look just like your mother." But the room had no reply. Only silence. Only the weight of every door she'd locked behind her. The new apartment had no keypad, no digital lock, just an old brass key that stuck in the door if she turned it too fast. The walls were off-white, chipped in the corners, the floor creaked when she walked, and the windows didn't seal properly. At night, the wind slipped in and reminded her she wasn't where she used to be. Diana kept the place bare. A couch, a kettle, a table with one chair. No assistants, no smart speakers, no synchronized climate control. If she wanted heat, she turned the knob. If she wanted light, she pulled the string. Everything was manual now, and maybe that was the point. She no longer received calls from reporters. They had moved on. A new scandal, a bigger name, Mason, too, had disappeared. After the story broke, his number went dark. No voicemail, no trace. She hadn't expected him to stay. That wasn't what their connection had ever been about. Ellie didn't write. There was one letter, early on, a formality from Graham's office confirming visitation conditions. Diana hadn't asked for more. She couldn't decide if the silence was punishment or protection. Maybe both. She made her coffee by hand now. A slow pour. She watched it steam. Some days, she played the radio low just to fill the rooms. On others, she sat in complete stillness, letting the hum of the city buzz through the cracked window panes. Time moved differently here, not slower, just less layered. She kept thinking it would hurt more. And maybe it did, just not in a loud way. One afternoon, the kitchen sink stopped draining. She noticed it after rinsing out her mug, brown water swirling. Then pausing, refusing to disappear, she wiped her hands on a dish towel and stared at it. She didn't move. She knew how to fix it. Not with tools, but with a call, with a request. But she didn't. She sat at the table instead, facing the window. The late sun bled through the dusty glass, painting the counter in golden shadow. The smell of old plumbing lingered in the air. She listened to the drip. Once a minute, then once every 30 seconds. She tried to remember the last time someone had entered this space. There was no answer. She stood finally, not with urgency, but with something slower, resignation. Maybe. She walked to the sink, turned the handle. Nothing came out, just a groan from the pipes. Then silence. Her fingers hovered over the faucet head, as if touching it might coax something loose. But nothing moved. No rush of water, no hiss, no release. She left it that way. Later that evening, Diana sat on the floor of the kitchen, not because she was tired, but because the chair felt too distant, too composed. The floor was cool beneath her legs. The room dimmed with each passing hour, but she didn't rise to turn on the light. The door remained open, not wide, just enough. A draft curled in. She watched the shadows stretch, like fingers reaching but not touching. In the quiet, she whispered something, not to anyone, not for anyone, just a thought let loose. I used to lock the door to keep someone in. A pause. Her eyes flicked to the open doorway. But I never realized I had locked myself in with my own emptiness. The words stayed in the air a long time. Longer than she expected. The faucet didn't drip anymore. It had nothing left to give. And neither, perhaps, did she. But she stayed seated, not because she was waiting, but because for the first time, she wasn't running. And that, at last, was something. Some doors locked to keep people out. Others, to keep pain in. Diana thought she was choosing desire. But in the end, she was just choosing silence. If her story sat heavy on your heart, hold on, because the next woman didn't stumble into her affair. She choreographed it. In Tampa, a steamy shower, a thin curtain, and a man with a wrench. Mila didn't need to be chased. She invited the storm. But what started in the heat of water ended with a photo that froze her world. Subscribe to Infidelity Chronicles, and I'll tell you what the steam tried to hide, but couldn't.